Ambassador, can you describe some examples of successful peace building? I think these days peacemaking is invisible to nearly everyone.
Well, I have a lot of examples of success, actually. Our first project was in Cyprus, which is an interesting case in itself. We started in 1992. Cyprus was a part of the British Empire until 1960, when it was suddenly declared a free and independent nation as the British Empire was collapsing. And for 4 years they had peace on this lovely island in the eastern Mediterranean. And then there was an attempted coup. Greece got a little greedy and wanted to take over the island. Didn't work, the coup, but there was a lot of killing, or ethnic cleansing as they called it in those days. And the UN Security Council met and put in a peacekeeping force just a few months later, 1964. 10 years later, 1974, there was another attempted coup. This time Turkey sent in 35,000 troops, a lot more killing, and all the Muslims moved to the north and all the Christians moved to the south, totally separate from each other when they've been living together for 1,000 years in peace. You couldn't cross the Green Line, which the UN set up, which has divided the capital city of Nicosia in half. You couldn't send a letter, you couldn't make a phone call. Totally isolated one side of the island from the other in 1974. We were invited there in 1992. Total stalemate between 1974 and 1992. No action whatsoever took place. And some of the people who asked us to come in were frustrated by this stalemate. Well, we only go where the people in a conflict invite us to come and see if we can help them. So that's a pretty basic issue. It's the people that we work with. So we got invited to Cyprus. We got permission from the UN to go to the other side. We went back and forth. We went for 3 weeks and just listened. Something that governments don't know how to do. And we asked people what their needs were. How could we as a small NGO help them? We didn't have money, but we had some skills. And they decided that they'd like very much for us to carry out some trainings in the field of conflict resolution to help break this stalemate that they were faced with all those decades. And so we decided to take on the project. Whenever we take on a project, we make a 5-year commitment to that project. It's not a weekend, not a month. It's 5 years or longer if they want. And actually we worked for 8 years in Cyprus. So we took on the project. And then we went and we called on 4 Track 1 entities. We called on Mr. Denktash, the Prime Minister in the Turkish Muslim North. We called on Mr. Klarides, the Prime Minister in the South. We called on the State Department, Washington, and on the island, the ambassador. We called on the UN in New York and on the island, the peacekeepers. And we said the same thing to all 4 of these Track 1 groups. We said, we've been invited on your beautiful island by all of those tracks that make up the community to try to see if we can be of help providing conflict resolution training. And so we wanted you to know about it. And we invite you as Track 1 to participate in every one of those trainings that we would hope to hold. We didn't ask for their permission, but we wanted them to know about it. Well, they were still a little puzzled about who we were and what we were all about. So I said, I believe that every conflict in the world can be resolved. There's no such thing as an intractable conflict. It takes time, it takes skill, it takes a little money, it takes patience, but eventually you are going to sign a peace treaty on this island of yours. And when you do that, all the Turkish soldiers will go home, and all the UN peacekeepers will go back to where they've come from. And you'll have peace on this beautiful island for 3 weeks. And then someone who doesn't want peace will create an act of violence, or kill somebody or blow something up. And by that time, we will have trained a critical mass of people from all of these tracks on this island of yours. And some of them will have connections in that village where that act of violence took place, or that community. And they will go there and they will contain the conflict. That's their goal, to contain the conflict. so it doesn't spread across the island. So our goal is to break the cycle of conflict. To break the cycle of conflict. If you do that, then you can begin to build a peace process. Well, somehow they seemed to understand, and they didn't seem to object. So we worked separately for 15 months with the Muslims in the north, separate from the Christians in the south. And then we brought 6 people from each side together on the Green Line at the Lidra Palace Hotel. 6 Christians, 6 Muslims. They were political leaders, a university president, a businessman, a lawyer, a journalist, a poetess. They'd never met before, but because they trusted us, and that's what's critical in this whole business, and they had the skills, they bonded within an hour, and they became our steering committee. And over the next 8 years, we trained 2,500 Cypriots together. That's a lot of people. And then we ran out of money and we left the island. Well, 3 years ago, suddenly the deputy prime minister of the Turkish Muslim North declared to the world, I'm opening the gates on the Green Line. I want the people to move back and forth as they used to do. I want them to get to know the other side. I want them to visit where they used to live. I want to change the whole dynamics of this island. He raised the gates, and within the first 24 hours, 5,000 people went back and forth across that line, both sides back and forth. 5,000 in 24 hours. Nobody was shot, nobody was killed, nobody was hurt. The people that we had trained on both sides told their friends, it's okay, you know, it's okay to go across that line. Don't worry about it. Within the next 3 months, 700,000 people crossed that Green Line. There are only 1 million people on the island. Who raised the gates? One of those 6 Muslim that we brought together after 15 months on the island and working together. We worked with him for years. 10 years later, he had the power to raise the gates, and he changed the dynamics of the island peacefully, and now we have peace on Cyprus.